Finally, it's here. We finally did it. I made my albums of 2020, and I'm gonna tell them about to you a month late or two.
Or 3. I'm not too sure when I'll finish either this or the
whenever this comes out.
Play video. Yeah, whenever this comes out.
Whenever this comes out. So in this list of 2020 albums, I'm gonna go into albums I don't like as much, and then keep going until I get to that top 15 spot where I go more in depth of my favorite albums. At least all of them that I feel like talking about. And yeah, there's a lot to get through, so let's At the bottom of the list, we have Daily Girls with Boss. This raging synth-punk technical... not a fan. Just gotta move on. Right above that, we have the man, Eminem. Music to be murdered by. Eminem is Eminem, and what is he doing? I don't get why he's so angry. He's still so angry. Why are you angry, Eminem? Moving on, we have Tame Impala's The Slow Rush. And boy, has Tame Impala slowed down, maybe to become Lame Impala. Onward and forward, we have King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, KG. This is just King Gizzard bread and butter combo. That you see it all the time. If all their albums just sucked out all the interesting focus and forward perspectives that the band offers, this is, I think, the album. Go listen to something else if you want to listen to them. Numbers go down, and now we're at Poppy. I disagree. Poppy, if you don't know, used to be a weird AI on YouTube kind of thing, and now has transitioned to this weird fusion of pop and metal on this record. Can give it up to her, but still the abrasiveness from the metal and then the very clean, polished pop sound that they mix in between, just like baby metal does, still is a hard combination for me to take. But I think Poppy still has an interesting take than from baby metal. Up next, we have Taylor Swift's Folklore. This is a kind of a left field approach from Taylor Swift, now approaching a indie folk sound instead of her usual country pop mix that she has. And I gotta give it to her, she did pull it off surprisingly well. The next album that drops in is Oliver Tree, Ugly is Beautiful. I've been super excited about Oliver Tree's project with the singles of Alien Boy and Hurt. They were fun and energetic, but now in this album perspective, it seems to have lost a lot of its flair, I guess. It kind of makes me have the emotional feelings that Weezer does, and it's also just as memey as Weezer, so meh. Upwards, we now have Machine Girl, You Void Synthesizer. This very fast, energetic, high wall of a touch of industrial beatdown, drums, has another one. And this time, Machine Girl figures out how to use the throttle of that sound. So that's good. Now we move on to someone that should be in the Grammys, The Weeknd, with The After Hours. Weeknd pulls off a mature pop record that's sweet and groovy. It's just Drake, but clubbier. And now we have a round 2 from Taylor Swift with Evermore. Taylor Swift kind of continues with Folklore's ideas, but adding kind of electronic mix in that indie folk sound. She's able to pull it off pretty nicely, even having help from Bon Iver. And I just kind of hope to see more of this idea, kind of be more focused and maybe have an overall idea, because right now it just kind of sounds like a mishmash of ideas. And now we come to Childish Gambino's March 15th, 2020.
Wait, that came out in 2020?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like, he could have put a date on it or something.
Why don't I put a date on it, but
You forgot about it?
Yes.
Oh, you're actually serious, okay.
Felt like it was 3 years old.
You've been drinking the time juice. You forgot about time. This is the highly anticipated Childish Gambino record that kind of fell flat. Donald Glover still offers great sounds on this album. Still kind of a lack of focus, but we still have like Summer Song is a great banger, and there's a whole bunch of other ones like 4610. I wish it had This Is America on it. Up and over we go to DJ Sabrina, the Teenage DJ, with Charmed. If you love a electronic dance album with Sabrina the Teenage Witch samples in it, then this is for you, and you get a whole 3 hours worth of content. So yeah, it's a lot. Firing up, we now have The Flaming Lips with American Head. The renowned psychedelic American rock band comes back with another modernized psychedelic take, and they do a great job, but sadly, I just kind of want to listen to their old albums, like The Soft Bulletin or Yoshima Battles the Pink Robots. Those are a little bit more fun to me. If you're a big fan, this is something. Down the rabbit hole we go. We now have Mother's Cake's Cyberfunk. This is a band I've been waiting for a good record to come out of ever since their 2013 release, Creation's Finest. They had a great fuse of rock, funk, and soul with organs spreading out, and it was fun to listen to. Now with electronics and synthesizers throughout the album, and it's definitely a blast. We're now to Mac Miller's Circles. This is the posthumous record of the hip-hop artist Mac Miller. He's very self-reflective with his struggles, like his drug abuse, and also the production kind of really pulls this out as he raps about this. The production kind of makes it really laid back as you kind of get to sit there and talk to him like you're in a therapy class. It's relaxing and it's great. I wish I got into him sooner. Up and over, we now have Dope Body's Homebody. This is the first record returning back with a group after a hiatus, and now in quarantine, as based off the album title. The band kind of rejoins back with their very noisy garage rock sound that they're known for, that I constantly love, of how weird and eccentric as they jam these out. Sadly, this album doesn't quite seem to have a focus, I feel, besides being a lot about quarantine and just kind of wanting to make something or do something outside the home. Coming down the hill, we now have the Avalanches, We Will Always Love You. This plunderphonic band is returning again after their 2016 release of Wildflower, and it's now finally settling in that I will not get Since I Left You from them anymore. And We Will Always Love You definitely has a different taste with being kind of a more laid-back ambient sound, but it's not ambient enough. The plunderphonics in this record is still very nitpicky and trying to find new sounds or thinking of where those sounds come from, and it's truly wonderful. This album's being very reflective about love songs from them all, and if you love that kind of electronica, then give this a listen. Now we're at the part where I start butchering names. We have Sebastian's Konki. They have a nice mixing pop of hip-hop, funk, and soul, infused to be fun and delightful at the same time. Like on the song Fred, the vocalists both talk about a dinosaur in his lifestyle, just being a dinosaur. It's cute and puts a smile on my face. On to the next step, we have Special Interest with Passion Of. This is the second release from the all-queer New Orleans punk band. This grimy punk sound that they have is turned up to 13 on this release, as they're louder than ever with heavy electro bass drumming at you from the start with Disco 3. I love the abrasiveness of it that makes me want to ragdoll into a tree chopper or something. I love it. I love to jump around in this. Moving on the list, we have Dorian Electra with My Agenda. I'm super excited for this record ever since last year release of Flamboyant, with a great fusion of auto-tune and glitch pop that it was a perfect display. And now with My Agenda, Dorian becomes a internet edgelord. Besides having the fedora and the sword on the album cover, Dorian gets very more abrasive and in your face, but still kind of keeps that same glitch pop still in the background. And this one didn't quite hit the mark because I was still hoping for a nice polished one instead of this abrasive one, but hopefully we'll see where Dorian goes next, because they got everything. Moving up, we now have Moses Summoning with Gray. This is a very eye-opening hip-hop R&B fusion from Moses. He kind of always has been, but the way his vocals come on this one, they kind of sound more like alien instruments, and it's always been hard for me to kind of exactly describe this. But if you're looking for breathtaking new vocals ways for R&B and hip-hop, then this is gonna be something. And coming in with another round two, we have Dope Body with Crack a Light. This is the more concise and focused record coming from Dope Body. Even though they're still experimenting very well on this one, they now have interludes kind of breaking out the abrasiveness from this noise rock group again. And now we have a duo coming in as George Clanton and Nick Huxon release their self-titled release. If you don't know who these are, this is a well-known vaporwave artist, George Clanton, having a great self-career, and Nick Huxon, who is the vocalist from 311. They both collab for this beautiful vibe album that they felt that was needed in 2020, as it's very relaxing with mellow rock, guitars, and some ambient electronics kind of wrapping it around for a very soothing time. And another duo, we have Mason Rindroth and Chuck Solomon with Hylix 2 original soundtrack. This is a very quirky, oddball of a soundtrack, just like the game, even though it's supposed to be a kind of RPG. But the claymations that both Mason makes on this is just as weird as the music. For the loose guitars, and now Chuck is able to add a more concise sound with his slide guitar sounds that kind of bring in a broader scope. And each of the songs are very memorable, as it kind of takes me back to those places in the game. Like on the song Xeno Arcada is a great, lovely, spiritual dream kind of, as you're on a spaceship in that game. Recommend both. And now we have John Carroll Kirby's My Garden. That's that man right there. Yeah, that's John. John has been making some really interesting, relaxing electronic jazz vibes that I just love spacing out to. For very takes its time, giving you into the atmosphere, and never kind of wants to surprise you with relaxing piano passages, with other electronics smoothing into you. It's good for my soul, I believe. Crawling up to number 18, we have HMLTD, West of Eden. This is one of my first records I've listened to this year that I was very excited about. Ever since the release of Hate Music Last Time Delete in 2018, I've been excited ever since, and this album does not disappoint at all. The record is kind of also self-aware, as the narrator kind of loses his mind on some tracks being insane and kind of bringing up the West is dying trope. Kind of like a Jim Sharman production too. It's exciting and maddening all at the same time on this album. I recommend it. And now we're getting to the last 14 with Denzel Curry's Unlocked. I've been very in love with Denzel's work ever since his Taboo release, and sadly the Zoo release has not been very excited for me, as it was more of a step back and reassessment of Denzel's sound for it, and it's not as diverse as Taboo was. While Unlocked doesn't spread as far for it, but this did drop with a animation to go with every song on it too, which is all on YouTube, and it was great and fun to watch. Denzel Curry with Kenny Beats is such a solid input. Denzel is hard on most of the songs as ever as he was, and Kenny Beats is able to follow that up and kind of take Denzel into different territories than he's usually used to, I believe. But Denzel Curry was able to hit the nail on this one, and would definitely recommend checking that animation out. And clocking it at number 13, we have Lianne La Havas' self-titled album. This is the third album from Lianne La Havas, and how come not everyone knows about her? Why? Why does no one talk about her? She is a wonderful singer. This is the third album from Lianne, and it's kind of a culmination of all of her two records, kind of pushing her envelopes a bit. Moving up a notch, we now have 070 Shake with Modus Vivendi, which means way of living in Latin. So thank you, Shake. I learned a little Latin. Anyways, if you don't know, 070 Shake used to be a guest artist with some of Kanye West's songs, and was even seen on Pusha T's Daytona release. So she's kind of an upcoming producer and now has her full studio album release, and it's amazing. This album drew me in with the sci-fi look on that album cover. I just love the look of it, and Shake does seem to present this sound very well, making me feel like this post-humanist trap sound or hip-hop sound with a lot of cool kind of mellow bangers with Consciousness, Guilty, and Morrow, which I all love. And throughout the 14 tracks on this album, the production is solid to consistently have that sci-fi hip-hop sound that I just love throughout it. And better as we go, we're now at number 11 with Jessie Ware, What's Your Pleasure? This is probably my favorite pop record of the year. Jessie Ware is absolutely banging on this album with some pop retro fusions that Jessie Ware is able to pull up seem flawlessly track after track on this record. Mostly throughout this record it's very funky, upbeat, and it just every time it comes on it seems like a disco ball comes down and you gotta dance to it. Jessie Ware always is able to put that infectious virus into me, like the track Soul Control. Now I can always hear that vocal line of Soul Control, that's how you want it. Soul Control, that's how you give it. I don't think that's it.
I do not want that.
You don't want that? Okay, we'll cut that out. Now we're getting to the top 10 with Imperial Triumph, Alphaville. This technical, dissonant, death black metal band decides to add jazz into their mix of sounds, and they even do it in an Art Deco fashion too. The band offers a lot of free jazz pianos, roaring saxophones, and noir film samples throughout the album, kind of creating this like superiority kind of feeling throughout the album, with the album being Alphaville, so only the alphas could be here.
No betas allowed.
Where's my Omega boys at?
Nah, it's about them Sigma boys.
Sigma boys. And clocking out at number 9, we have Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist with Alfredo. This is one of my more anticipated records, as Freddie Gibbs has shown himself very well with solo projects, even after his Pinata release with Madlib. And Alchemist, hopefully he proves himself, because Pinata 2 would be pretty dope. And Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist seem to pull it off pretty well, as they kind of experiment and take a little bit different spin than Freddie Gibbs is probably used to, with having a lot more guest artists that I feel that I'd love to have, like Tyler the Creator on here, kind of being a low back burr, kind of presents really well with Freddie Gibbs' low and smoky voice that he has. This is just another example of Freddie Gibbs as a talented rapper, and can't wait for more stuff with him, maybe even with some other producers or more producers, like Madlib. That would be cool. You said Pinata 2, where's that? Number 8, we have the Koreatown Oddity with Little Dominique's Nosebleed. As Koreatown Oddity kind of fulfills his life and kind of paints his life in this album as having 2 significant events of having a nosebleed during 2 car crashes. And it gets very hilarious throughout the tracks. On the second story of Little Dominique's Nosebleed, you hear his mother kind of going off at the other driver, and it's just hilarious of how she reacts to the situation from a listener perspective. This tongue-in-cheek comedy that Koreatown Oddity does throughout the album is kind of spot on and perfect. I just love how fluidly it goes with this hip-hop presentation. Some of my hilarious moments on this album is like on the track Weed in LA, there's an outro skit where Dominique is being interviewed by someone and is asking, well, where did your name come from, the Koreatown Oddity? What's your favorite Korean food? Of course, Dominique kind of responds in a sarcastic manner, being like, well, actually, I don't like Korean barbecue. Actually, I don't eat food at all. I don't even like food. Dominique is able to put this very well even into one track of his comedy with Attention Challenge, where the whole beat is kind of laid up of someone asking Black Google a question, and then the robot responds, yes, yes. And it's hilarious of what the responses and the questions asked to Black Google are. Even the album ending on the world's smallest violin is a beautiful touch to this album. And moving up, we now have Shabaka and the Ancestors with We Are Sent Here by History. This is one of my favorite modern saxophones, Shabaka Hutchings, who has also played on Sons of Kemet, Melt Yourself Down, and The Comet Is Coming. And this is the second record release from the project Shabaka and the Ancestors, and kind of continues on this spiritual side of Shabaka's jazz performance, being very kind of hip-hop-y, Afrobeat, and it's just groovy and kind of catchy to me. I just love the performance Shabaka has on the saxophone, kind of having like a second voice. And rolling down the hill, we now have Jeff Rosenstock with No Dream. This is the 4th studio album from Jeff Rosenstock, who has now come back even harder compared from like Post. Post was kind of a more grimy pop punk influence, and I always loved Worry and wish he would kind of come back to that, and that's kind of what No Dream is, and so I'm super excited! Mr. Rosenstock seems to pull out a lot of stuff, being very abrasive and loud to your up front with the opening track, and Rosenstock kind of sings about the same things of having this anxiety, but probably now in the 2020 sense. Being very aware of the crunching economy and not really sure of what to do with his life, as he's just in a pop punk band. Jeff Rosenstock is best when he's emotional and being very loud and up in your face, and No Dream definitely capitalizes back on that, just like his previous early works. And I just love it. It's kind of all the same great stuff with the catchiness of pop punk and with a nihilistic cry that Jeff always seems to put on it. Now we're at the top 5, and at number 5 we have Charli XCX. How I'm feeling right now. Charli XCX comes back strong with now a follow-up from one of my favorite pop albums from 2019, Charli. It was a huge flex from Charli being able to show the glitch pop scenario that she does, and she kind of pushes it further now with this quarantine vibe around it, as Charli sings on these songs, not being able to party and go out and meet all of her friends in 2020. And this album really shows it, being very harsh noise in a production from some of her fans to do this. And the glitchiness and abrasiveness kind of really shows of how 2020 kind of was. And boy, does she put out another great one. It's definitely a continuation of the Charli sound that was. And now at number 4, we have more words I cannot pronounce correctly. We have Oranzi Pazuzu with Mysterian Konzinsi. Nailed it. The band's name being Orange Demon, or at least a Finnish folklore demon. And when I listen to this album, it really does represent the album cover, being this black cosmic sludge that this metal band has brought out to me. As I just kind of swarm in it, as it just kind of drowns me out with this abrasiveness and kind of psychedelic tone it takes with me. The band kind of adds a rhythmic, hypnotic sensation, like on the track Yuyuzi Tenkatara, where they fuse in a flute to mix in with the riffs of the album, and it's just so wonderful and catching, and I'll definitely give this the best metal album of the year, I have to say. And now we're at the top 3, and at number 3 we have Rina Sawayama. Sawayama. This is the first studio album from Rina, as I was very excited ever since her first EP release of Rina. It was produced with Clarence Clarity, a great production artist and electronic artist that I do love, as they create a kind of a distorted 90s Britney Spears pop sound that's intoxicating, you know? Farina kind of continues that pop sound with on the track XS, the letters, and then also meaning excess things and wanting more things. Can never have enough things, like in the capitalist structure we have, always need more. Rina also becomes more edgy, like on the song Shut the Fuck Up, where she kind of even brings in metal riffs on some of the chorus, as she also talks about her dating life and having stereotypes projected onto her on some of those moments, and that really sucks, but the switch between being kind of this 90s grunge sound and then back to the 90s pop sound is really compelling and interesting. I hope Rina continues on this work, on this 90s distorted pop sound, which I just absolutely love. And coming in at number 2, we now have Salute, Untitled, Black Is and Rise. These are 2 separate albums that the band has decided to keep untitled and have a subtitle for each of them. But I believe both of their messages closely related and also different at the same time. So I'm putting them both here because it's untitled. It's my list. The album Black Is kind of has a more overall call to arms vibe to it. A little bit more upbeat and kind of get you going and to converge onto this one idea of being black and being proud of it. While on the next one, Rise, it is kind of more of a self-reflection and trying to kind of ensemble this idea that Salute seems to offer with This is going over multiple songs, kind of offering this as well. Both of these albums are excellent and kind of dive into both of these themes that they both present. And want to recommend both of them here at number 2. And at number 1, we have Clipping, Visions of Bodies Being Burned. I'm done. There you go. This is Clipping's sister album to There Existed an Addiction to Blood, as they both have a similar album cover and were both released in October, because Halloween isn't spooky like this album. This Clipping, usually a dark experimental band, now kind of pushes further, giving more edge and more kind of abrasive noise to this album. The V Diggs is even more flawless than ever on this, as he kind of usually always is. Being very pronunciating and fast rapping is just stunning to hear. For the band kind of mixes in more with these electronic sounds, as it's clearly shown on Pain Every Day, which is one of my favorite tracks on this. On this album, they have it more focused and make sure every track just seems to have the right bite. The V Diggs keeps rapping on having this weird pain that he has, and it kind of just descends down into this blistering drum and bass, and I just can't get enough. Clipping just seems to effortlessly put out these dark and true to hip-hop songs that I don't even know if they can even get better now that they released this album. It's beautiful. I love it. I even got it. I got a copy. I got a copy. This is number 1, and that's all I got to say. We did it. I think we did it. And that's it. That's all my 2020 albums I have to tell you about. Did you like them all? Did you hate them all? Did I miss something? I guess let me know in the comments. And subscribe if you want to see more, because I hope to have a bigger output this year than last year. But I'm not going to make that promise. Fuck that. Like, comment, subscribe, and now it's 2021.
It's been 2021. We're in February right now.
Oh!
Oops.
Oops.
My bad.